Hey internet, hey YouTube, this is Nate, and welcome back to Vampire Survivors. We're going to do a quick no move challenge while discussing kind of my thoughts coming out of the recent run that I did of Vampire Survivors, where I started with basically nothing and kind of went through until I got every single achievement. Because I think it's quite interesting to think about. Really, there's kind of this like two types of experiences that I think I've had with the game. And I think it was good for me to go back now, kind of much later after I've played or haven't played for a while, and really think through the game more holistically, right? Because I think, especially when the newest release came out, before I had a chance to do my other run, I was pretty negative around the new release. Mostly around just endless mode, inverse mode for me being a little bit of a disappointment. So I really appreciate now like that I had the chance to kind of go back and kind of re-experience the game from the perspective of like a newer player. Because I actually think if you think about the game again more holistically, right? So not just like from the perspective of a player who has basically gotten all achievements and beaten the game, like that's one type of experience, right? And then to be frank, you kind of can struggle with like what is the what is the motivation to keep playing, and the game's not adding, when it adds new content, it's not really adding like tons of like forever content. But I think, as I said, going back through the game now from that other perspective, the perspective of basically starting with nothing and going through the entire game, what came across to me more than I had kind of realized, having gone through this experience as someone who started playing really early on into the game, right, is how cohesive the experience ended up being for me when I played it the second time, right? So think about like, for those of you that have been playing Vampire Survivors or played Vampire Survivors when it first came out, you could burn through the achievements relatively quickly. At the time when it first released, you had, 8-9 characters, including the secret characters. You had really 2 maps, library and the forest. And, there wasn't like a lot to the game at that point. It really was just kind of like, yeah, you beat the Mad Forest, you beat the library, and you're basically done with the game. Now, we're talking about not quite a full year of development, but, a good amount of a year, let's say 8-9 months of development, regular updates roughly every 2 to 3 weeks. And again, as a player who's, been playing since the very beginning, you come back for an update, you probably get another, let's say 2 to 3 hours worth of like really solid content, more if you're into things like trying to get, kill records or survival records, although survival records have kind of gone the way of the dodo with some of the invulnerability runs, but you know what I mean? Like, you come back, you might play for doing some of this record stuff, you might try to do some like no move challenges with new characters like I'm doing now, but you can burn through most of the achievements in 2 to 3 hours. And so again, that motivation to like keep playing the game over and over again maybe isn't there. But, if you're just kind of regularly checking updates, maybe you don't play every update, maybe you play every other update, you're getting a solid, in a month, 3 to 4 hours of like solid content out of the game. But I really, again, and this is kind of my recommendation, if you're in that boat where you've kind of done everything and you still kind of want to play Vampire Survivors but don't really know how to get like a good experience out of it, highly recommend you do what I did. Not necessarily at the pace that I did it very aggressively, like in one run, but I was surprised how much I enjoyed going back and kind of experiencing the entire game from the perspective of a new player. And I want to talk about a lot of the improvements that I think have come to like the new player experience versus maybe like the experience that I had as a new player when I first started playing the game. Because again, when you started playing a long time ago, I would say there were some like quality of life things that really made the new player experience much more grindy than it is right now. So new players didn't know about things like on-ground items, right? That kind of got discovered with the library. The fact that you had Stone Mask, then later people discovered there was also the Tome. And then randomly we discovered that, after the remake of the forest map, that there was, on-ground items other places. Like, that whole discovery sequence, I feel like is way more interesting now as a newer player coming to the game than it really was for those of us that kind of played. Yeah, it was cool, but like, I'm thinking about that new player experience of like, you come to this game, you play the first couple of times, it's really hard, but you survive just long enough to unlock a new map. And then you start that new map, and you see that there's this random green arrow. This is like, you're coming in, you finish the forest, you go to the library, just random green arrow. You're like, what in the world could that be? Well, you go find that arrow, and it unlocks this new ability to see this grimoire, right? So now all of a sudden you have this new grimoire functionality added into the game. And you grind out the library a few times more, and suddenly you unlock the dairy plant. And in the dairy plant, there's 2 more green arrows. Well, you get those green arrows, and one of them is a map. And you open up the map, and now all of a sudden you see there's all these on-ground items that, like, the game didn't tell you about. They've kind of always been there, but the game wasn't explicit that they were there up until this point. Then you go back and play the Mad Forest, you go back and play the library, and all of a sudden you realize, oh wow, there was actually like all these on-ground items and more things for me to unlock that I had no idea were there. Okay, great. So then you go through that experience, you go back, get those other items, you move on to the Gallow Tower, and again, more green arrows. And this time when you open up your map, you can actually kind of see where those green arrows are pointing you to. And you go up to the top and you randomly unlock this thing called Arcanas. And suddenly there's this whole new layer to the game. Instead of just leveling up, picking weapons, and picking up accessories, you now have this extra layer. And I should also even add that the library itself really points to the fact that like there's even this idea of evolutions to begin with, because playing the Mad Forest, it's not obvious that a treasure chest can unlock this kind of this evolution, but suddenly you have this grimoire that says weapon evolutions and unions, and opens up this whole idea of like, oh wait, hold on, certain weapons and certain items together can generate new, better weapons. Like, again, there was this moment of self-discovery as a player back in, January, December, that now as a new player is actually, I think, really cool how that's been designed. Your first map is just like, oh, you're just playing a survival game, picking weapons, picking accessories, and surviving. The second map adds in this whole layer of like, oh my gosh, now I know that there's actually the possibility of combining certain weapons with certain items. And by doing that, I can get even more powerful weapons. And now this third map, is opening up this possibility of being able to like actually pick up things off the ground. And, maybe I should try. What happens if I have all of my items already? What happens if I pick up an item then? And you can discover, oh wow, you can actually have more than 6 items. I never, you never really thought about that, but now that you can pick up these ground items, you can suddenly get more. And I actually really like how that progression works, where each new layer, each new map doesn't just add a new map, each one is layering in new details into the game. Simple at first, getting weapons, getting accessories, unlocking characters, spending your money. That's really all it gets revealed in the Mad Forest. Library, opening up this like first off, new style to play with a completely different map configuration. Like pretty radically changing the strategy about how you build. I mean, not entirely, but a little bit. Certainly the way that you like move around and engage with enemies. But then unlocking this whole idea of like actually your weapons can evolve if you combine them with certain things. Then you go to the dairy plant, opening up this whole idea of like moving across the map to gather specific items. Then, you know, unlocking the Gallo Tower and realizing that there's actually this whole Arcana layer with brand new unlocks and brand new kind of layer to the game. Then you start unlocking these like new special maps that have their own unique features behind them that aren't explicit what they are. They're kind of self-discovery, and you realize, wow, okay, we have this map that's just a bunch of plants that can't attack me. That's super interesting, very, very strange. Then, you know, I've added on this new map, Green Acres, which is basically just like the Mad Forest, except that the waves are completely random. And also there's this, you know, pickup where I can then like pick my music each time, which is kind of whatever. And the other thing that you discover with these maps is like, oh yeah, by the way, on all these maps that you've been playing, there was always these hidden characters that you could have gotten. And so what the game does is it reinforces this like kind of pull of like, discover a new map, learn the new gameplay mechanic, go back and replay the old maps to like learn what was there that you never knew about. Right? And it happens over and over again in the pattern of the game, which I find like completely genius, right? Like a lot of the games in the genre right now, and I think it's one of the reasons why Vampire Survivors, despite the fact that it's really one of the most simple versions of the swarm survival genre, right? Like it's certainly the least complex in terms of just mechanics of the game. But why I think it, you know, continues to kind of outshine a lot of the other games is the fact that it does have this like really, really well designed layering effect, getting you to get more out of the content you've already experienced. You know, by the end of the game, you've probably played the Mad Forest like at least, you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 times, maybe even more depending on how, you know, well you were able to win, you know, beat the map. But every single time you unlock something new, you know, weapon evolutions, map contents, new characters, and that's before you get into even things like, you know, suddenly you go into this weird Moonglow level, which seems completely normal, and then at the end of the level everything goes batshit crazy, and you're suddenly teleported into this weird world where you have to survive this ridiculous, you know, walk through this like gauntlet of enemies. And then all of a sudden every single map now has these brand new items that you've never seen before. Half of them don't even do anything good for you. The other half do this kind of like mild upgrade, and they're guarded by these random cloak enemies that can almost one-shot you. Like it's so ingenious in the way that it continues to layer in more and more on top of the content you've already experienced, right? Super fascinating, culminating in this like really trippy experience where you go into Capella Magna. Oh, well, there's our first death. Where you go into Capella Magna, right? And the whole experience of Capella Magna is like, this is not a normal level anymore. You know, if you play it the first time before you've done Moonglow, it's like, you know, just a normal map with some extra on-map stuff. But then when you play it after Moonglow, everything gets weird and there's like Reapers everywhere. And you have to survive this really crazy boss fight at the end with this crazy, you know, combination of all the different, you know, Reapers in one boss. So it just gets really interesting and layered in a way that I find very captivating, and that I can imagine as a new player is super interesting. That, you know, the game continues to kind of show you there's more to it. You know, and that again culminates in this kind of like weird trippiness of like the last few layers, along with the whole secrets, right? So then you get this secrets thing in Bone Tower, or in the Bone Zone, which then you have to go back and replay the maps because you realize all of a sudden, wow, the whole time there were all these secrets that I never even knew about that were like always there, but weren't obvious that they were available until this point. So again, I find it just super fascinating how this whole like layering of content was done and how it was handled in the game, and how it culminates in this experience that builds on itself and gets way more really than it honestly should out of the content that's available. And, you know, having, again, gone through that experience a second time from the very beginning, or even for me, it's probably the third or fourth time, but now on full release, being able to experience the game as a complete package, a fully released package, it was surprising to me how much I enjoyed that natural layering of the experience. And even though I knew that these things were there, the way that it progressed and things unlocked and everything became revealed was very, very captivating to me. And it just kind of goes to show why, despite the fact that, again, definitely one of the simpler mechanical games in the genre, why Vampire Survivors is so endearing, is so popular, why it continues to get new people getting into the game for the first time, and why I think it's, you know, whether the developers keep, you know, improving and adding and, you know, whatever else they decide to do with the game in the future, like the game as a complete package is really, really well designed. Surprisingly well designed from a feedback loop, from a replayability, and from just like a kind of exploration discovery point of view. And I thought it would just be good, considering, you know, again, I've been like pretty critical recently of the game. And again, that's coming from a player who's put close to 1,000 hours into the game. I'm going to have a very different perspective than somebody that's coming to the game new. And I thought it would be good to kind of take this chance now that I have done this kind of like reset and re-experiencing the game, to just talk about what I really like about it, why I think it's such a great game, why I invested so much time in it to begin with, and, you know, why I think it's such a great game for new players who haven't played the game yet to come in and experience. And are we really going to die before the end? No, we're going to make it. But that's it. I mean, kind of some unstructured thoughts, maybe a little bit. But yeah, I want to take the time at this point, having just done that kind of whole play session, which, by the way, if you have not seen it yet, I really enjoyed that play session. I hope you guys enjoyed it who did watch through it or joined live. Really had a great experience kind of rediscovering the game from the beginning again. And with that, that's really the end. And hope if you haven't played the game, I think it's a fantastic time to jump into it. I really think it's quite a great full package experience. And if you have played the game all the way through and you're kind of like, you know, you want that experience again, highly recommend. Reset your file, start over. It's a really good experience. And with that, this has been Nate. Thanks for watching. See you next time.